Good morning, Bear Nation. It is apparently a Monday. Congrats to you for being awake and alive, for waking up on this side of the dirt. North Shore Preparedness passed away Saturday morning. Rest in peace. I am really sorry to hear that. May the Father receive his soul. Well, that's a great way to start the show. Thanks, RLRL. I did want to give a quick shout out to Hoplafile at his channel. He hit 100,000 subscribers recently. I'm a fan of Hop, super duper big fanboy of Hop. No, I like what he does. I like what he's about. I like basically his raw take on guns and gear. And even though he's in the industry, he's very honest about what he thinks. And I appreciate that because I'm no fan of third-party advertising, as y'all are aware. Now, listen, if you're new here, subscribe, ring the little bell icon, do all that stuff that you're supposed to do on YouTube. You've been conditioned enough by now to know what to do. So just do those things. We're in the process of being shadow banned again by YouTube. Views are down to about a third of what we normally get. So if you're not new here, you know what to do. Share the show as I clean my fingernails with a wonderful Spyderco. This is the Spyderco Endora with the wave function. And I'm cleaning my nails with the Spyderco because, as you may have noticed, there was a winter storm over the last 4-ish days, and the main water line to my house took it upon itself to fail catastrophically. And when I finish this brief, I'm either going to go fix my water line and or find my stash of dude wipes because I've PT'd twice this morning and I smell wonderful. So we're going to start, we're going to talk about this storm. We're going to talk about Ukrainian airstrikes. We're going to talk about ballistic missiles in India on their border with China. And we're going to talk about everybody's favorite subject, inflation, today on the brief. So I guess we should do that, right? I mean, it is Monday, right? Bear, I need a best man. You down for a Georgia trip? It depends on when it is, bro. Also, best man, I love you, but I don't even know who you are. So what would the best man speech be like? So, Noxo Cow is marrying this lovely young lady, ? Who I've never met before, but we all love them and think they're cool. And therefore, let's all hoist a glass for these people that I just met, and may the Father bless them richly in their endeavors to do things that I'm completely unaware of and hopefully are righteous. Amen. There you go. Just play that at your wedding. Okay? Sounds good. The winter storm has struck the grid hard, the grid being all those wires and tubes and nuts and bolts that supply electricity from where it's produced to your house. For the first time in 90 years, the Tennessee Valley Authority called for rolling blackouts to stabilize the grid. That's because demand exceeded supply, and if demand exceeds supply on the grid, this little thing called a failure happens where the whole thing shuts down, and then you have to do what's called a black start. Good morning, Michael Martinez. Thank you. And it's dangerous and costly, and it can actually further exacerbate the issue depending on what it is that caused the grid to fail in the first place. You can start breaking things that don't need to be fully broken, right? So let's see. Due to sub-zero temperatures, the grid saw energy demand spike 35% over the norm, and fuel, coal, and gas facilities were simultaneously rendered non-functional. Good times, good times. This all occurred in addition to the power outages caused by downed trees, high winds, and automobile impacts to power lines. I want to throw this out there. My mom, for a while, worked at one of the major telephone companies, and she was in charge of, in the engineering department, of scheduling the replacement of all the poles that people would crash their vehicles into, which was handy if you had friends who wrecked their vehicles into a telephone pole, because you could get that squared away without necessarily having to come out of pocket. Good morning, Texas T. Thank you, brother. However, it was always, this is in upstate New York, and it snows there. And she would get overwhelmed during periods of inclement weather because people would just continue to drive as if they knew how to drive in the snow. And most people don't. It was a rite of passage in upstate New York. You did not know how to drive, whether you had your license or not. You did not know how to drive until you went to like an empty mall parking lot or school parking lot or church parking lot and just power slid all through the parking lot, shifting gears, turning, overcorrecting, correcting, getting stuck in ditches, getting back out of ditches, yada, yada, yada. Most people can't drive, let alone drive in the snow. So if you don't have to go anywhere, don't go anywhere. And if you do have to go somewhere, please know how to actually drive in the snow, because most of the other people out on the road, especially here in Oklahoma, where literally the state shuts down if we get an inch of snow, literally, people don't know how to drive in this stuff. So if you don't know how to drive in the snow, don't. And if you do have to drive in the snow and you know how to drive, just be super duper careful, because nobody else, statistically speaking, knows how to drive in the snow. Okay. Public safety announcement from Bear Clan to you. The Nashville Electric Service apparently only had minutes to act, which means that residents were suddenly found themselves without power. On the plus side, this is considered a once-in-a-generation event, not a sign of looming grid issues by the industry, by Mr. Bear Guy. Well, we'll just continue. Still, as many in the millennial generation will jokingly attest, these once-in-a-generation events are becoming suspiciously common. I would encourage you, in fact, our beloved dance monkeys, Intel at Bear Independent, have asked for you all to write in with your lessons learned from this winter storm. If you can send them to Intel at Bear Independent, and if you don't know how to spell that email address, Intel at Bear Independent, you have self-selected out of your ability to be able to provide intel, which is short for intelligence, to the Bear Nation. Okay. So if you have some good practical, tactical lessons learned from this winter storm, not like, I found out that I like wool socks on my foots. Like, yeah, we know, right? Good to go. Send it to Intel at Bear Independent. I'll tell you this, Icebreakers is a company that makes lovely, expensive merino wool, long-handled underwear, which I've had for a season. I'm going into season 2. It's still December, y'all. And they have freaking holes in them for no apparent reason. And last night, sitting around the fire as we were burning brush at Bear Camp Actual, I was lamenting the sad state of my long-handled underwear, and I did a thing that I rarely do, which was read internet reviews, which I should have done beforehand, because apparently everybody else has that problem too. So I've got $70 hooker leggings now. They look like what you used to get from Spencer's in the mall back in the day. Well, not what I used to get. Maybe you did. Although I did have a thing for girls who wore fishnets back in the day.
So you didn't wear them.
I didn't.
May have purchased
My girlfriend at one time worked at Spencer.
Oh.
She was the hot redhead at Spencer. Yeah.
All the toys.
Yep. And then I was dating a girl that worked at Haagen-Dazs upstairs from the mall, and they didn't like each other.
I was going to say, it's a very different kind of girl.
Well, no, she was still a metalhead too, but she also was just down with the froyo. So, yeah. Anyway, it's like, what do you want? Free Spencer gifts or free ice cream? It's like, probably free ice cream. Anyway, back to things that matter. Driving the point home is that this wasn't an isolated incident in one small part of the country. PJM, the Mid-Atlantic electricity grid operator that services 65 million people, issued a request for consumers to lower their use as much as possible for the same reasons that Tennessee saw rolling blackouts. The cold was so extreme that power plants were struggling to operate. The company warned of potential for rolling blackouts. It's important to understand that the vast majority of power generation in the United States of America comes from creating heat that creates steam. And in order to have steam, you need liquid water. As evidenced here by this water bottle that was in the back of my truck this morning, please note the block of ice in the center of the water bottle. The water can make steam. The ice, not so much. And when your pipes that suck the water up into your power plant to make steam freeze up, you got problems. And a lot of that infrastructure was not designed to deal with extended temperatures below freezing. Water boils in a vacuum. Awesome, Moon Peach. You and I shall invest. We will be early investors in my next project to make power in space where there's a vacuum. And then we will beam it from space to the North Pole because it's melting anyway, unless you're a Russian research team that went to measure the ice that was melting at the North Pole and got stuck 600 miles further from the North Pole than you thought you were going to in ice. But, you know, and think of the burgeoning fried polar bear market, right? We shoot the power from space to the North Pole where we collect it and we put it in canning jars, ball canning jars. And then we have a ball canning jar space power delivery network that we then disperse out from there. You bring it home, you screw the canning jar into your power socket, good to go. Since we're in make-believe land, why not? From someone within the Bear Nation, quote, the temperature here in Memphis, Tennessee at noon, 23 December 22, is a balmy 10 degrees Fahrenheit. We saw a low as 5 degrees with a wind chill of minus 19. I know some people don't really get down with the wind chill, but when your boogers have frozen solid in your nose while you're trying to feed the sheep, I care about it. It sucked pretty hard. Let's see. Rolling blackouts are already occurring in West Tennessee and North Mississippi to conserve energy and avoid overloading the system due to higher demand. Memphis Light, Gas, and Robbery advised via press release that all areas that they serve should be ready for at least 2 blackouts each day for at least 30 minutes each until further notice. Backup generation. Please, Bear Nation. Backup generation. However, whatever, don't care. Walks in a circle hooked up to a generator. Gas generation, generation, propane generation, wood-fired steam generator generation, solar backups, Tesla wall, which I hear catches on fire, so maybe do your research. Whatever, solar, small-scale wind, whatever, don't care. Some type of backup generation, anything, please and thank you, anything. And I think for most people, for the most likely scenarios here where we're talking about winter storms, that's what most of us are going to have to deal with. And you're probably thinking, well, I live in Austin, Texas. I don't got to worry about, yeah, you do. I live in Tennessee. It gets cold here all the time. The power will never go out. Yeah, you do. For most people, in most likely scenarios, you're talking like get a 5 to 10 kilowatt generator and some gas cans and either wire it up if you know what you're doing or have a professional wire it up so that you can backfeed your house with it when the power goes out. Also, you must have a disconnect switch in between the backup generation and your service entry, or you'll kill linemen. And please don't kill linemen. They work really hard to make sure that when you plug your iPhone in, the little lightning bolt comes on. Okay? So don't kill linemen. My 100-year-old Fisher wood stove didn't go out. I love that, Jerry Robbins. I love that. Wood stoves are thebomb.com. They're making those illegal in many areas of the country because they want to control you. To which we all say it with me, Bear Nation. Everybody, a chorus of kiss my hairy white ass. Unless, of course, you're African American or you're don't have Germanic descent like I do, in which case, kiss my smooth black ass or whatever you're into, right? My little Asian ass, whatever you got, just kiss it, right? Wood stoves for the win. I should probably stick to doing the news, right? We're 13 minutes into this. I haven't even made it through the first page of the brief. Okay, we're off the rails. It's cold out. Who cares? It's Monday. Back to the brief. My brother-in-law lives in North Mississippi. Not my brother-in-law, the guy who wrote in. He's already lost power and has been told that they can expect rolling blackouts to last at least 45 minutes at a time. They're prepared, and so are we, but many in our urban area aren't. Population density equation. What does Pastor Joe say all the time? There are 2 things that are going to get you an SHTF. Starvation and people behaving badly, right? There you go, prepping survival, get them. That comment was held for review. My ass is so hairy, I can't confirm the skin color back there. That's cool. Go with it, man. Also, do you have 6 fingers and or 6 toes? In which case, please lay down so we can measure you with this line, and we might have to lop your head off. Just check it. Of course, in an area where the homicide rates keep climbing, we're prepared to protect ourselves too. I would prepare to call U-Haul myself personally, and then I would go through my house and be like, haven't touched that in 6 months. Not taking it with us. Yard sale, Facebook Marketplace, eBay, Etsy, whatever. Get rid of it. So I want to look at a couple other things this morning. If you're on Patreon, you got the links to all this. If you're not on Patreon, you don't. Good morning, patrons. Thank you for being the economic engine of the small nation, of the Bear Nation. Not small anymore, 178,000 strong. According to Newsweek, Russian airbase hit by explosion at Moscow blames Ukraine for drone strikes. A drone attack on Russia's Angles 2 airbase, more than 350 miles from the nearest Ukrainian-controlled territory, left 3 servicemen dead, according to Russian authorities, who, by the way, are super believable and there's no angle at all. They benefit not even 1% from telling things that might be untrue because they're politicians and you can trust them. The Russian Ministry of Defense said a Ukrainian drone was shot down by air defenses at around 1:35 a.m. local time on Monday morning. Debris from the drone then killed 3 Russian military personnel, according to the official report, with no damage to any aircraft, according to the official report. Now, we don't know if there was any damage to the aircraft or not because I wasn't there. If you were there, intel@bearindependent.com. Would love to know what actually happened. What's interesting, though, is that this particular airbase is staffed. It houses a bunch of Tupolev Tu-95 turboprop strategic bombers. And these strategic bombers are the types of bombers that, say, Russia or anybody else could potentially use to drop really big bombs and or nuclear weapons, which many of y'all are like, Bear, they don't exist. Okay, whatever. Really big bombs on people's foreheads, should they choose to do so. Yuri Ignat, a spokesman for the Ukrainian Air Force, hinted at Kiev's involvement in the attack. Speaking to Ukrainian media outlet Gazeta, he said, quote, "These are the consequences of what Russia is doing on our land. If the Russians thought that the war would not affect them deep in the rear, then they were wrong." Affected deep in the rear. Okay. Such things are happening more and more often, and we hope that it will only benefit Ukraine. End quote. A number of videos have been posted to social media purporting to show the explosion. They have not been independently verified by Newsweek. Roman Busagarin, governor of the Saratov Oblast, which includes the Angles 2 airbase, paid tribute to the dead and insisted that there is absolutely no threat to residents living in the nearby town of Angles itself. On social media, a number of experts questioned whether the drone had been downed by Russian air defense, as reported by Moscow. So that's an interesting development. Another interesting development is that there are 3 heaters in this office that we turn off when we do the brief because they make interesting background noise. And we're going to take 30 seconds and turn them back on because it's no longer sustainably warm in here. And we don't have a wood stove in here because we're failing miserably. So bear with us. Hit the button, KO. I'll hit this one. You did that one.
You're actually turning it on.
Yeah, I'm actually turning it on.
You gave up on being cold.
I said, if they came to this channel for production quality.
It's okay. We were just freezing here for a minute. So you wanted you to be able to hear us. You can't hear us now.
No, you can. Yeah, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. Good morning from Wilburton, Bear. Good morning, J&E Adventures. Got some really nice land out there in Wilburton, up there in the mountains, the little foothills, beautiful. Saw a bunch of land for sale in the Wilburton area, 3 or 4 years ago. Actually went and looked at some property out there for a brother or two, and ultimately decided against it because for what they wanted to do, aka homesteading, I was like, man, you got to do a lot of dirt work to make a flat spot just to park your car on, let alone like run animals on. But beautiful area, very beautiful area. How cold is it there, Bear? I missed it. It's cold. It's not quite kill you cold, as long as you're dressed appropriately. Like if you're still like going out in winter in Crocs, you might die. But that's I'm no fan of Darwin, but I do believe in natural selection. So if you're like, oh, it's December and it's 14 degrees outside, I'll throw some Crocs on. You earned it. You earned it. From RT, India to deploy ballistic missiles near China and Pakistan. New Delhi plans to station more than 120 missiles along the Indian border, ANI news agency reports. This is interesting. India intends to field more than 100 ballistic missiles along its border with China and Pakistan. Now, India and Pakistan don't get along, but neither do India and China. They have, what do they call it? The line of actual conflict, line of actual control, something like that. They have a contested border where many an Indian and Chinese soldier have been killed over the last decade or so. And that's interesting to me because a little thing happening in the world right now called BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and many other nations. It's now BRICS plus Saudi Arabia and blah, 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 right? So we're getting back to a dipolar, some would argue bipolar world, where we have the United States and its friends and Russia and its friends, Russia/China and their friends. And this is probably going to continue to develop because of the weakening of the US dollar, because of our poor performance in the global war on terror, because of the scumbags in the White House, because of blah, 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 the war in Ukraine, etc., right? So BRICS is likely to continue to gain power and market share around the globe. Okay. Do I love it? No. Is it good to have an enemy? Yes. It's actually good to have an enemy. The whole reason, my motivation for rucking this morning at the gym, honestly, was not because I'm fat and I need to PT. That's part of it. It was because I know for a fact there are people right now who want to kill me. And I don't mean that tongue in cheek. I mean, I know there are scumbags. There are bad people that we took good people from, Caleb House, one of our ministries, that they want to kill me. And given the opportunity, they would. And while my bed was warm and comfy at 4:30 this morning, unsustainable to stay there because I have to be better than those people are, right? And so having an enemy is good for you. To which I would say, try me, homeboy. Let's party. Let's party, right? And so it's interesting that India is essentially saying to China, try me, homeboy. Let's party. While also being a part of the second largest economic alliance in the world, right? They're allegedly economic buddies, but not so much when it comes down to the nitty gritty. The report follows New Delhi's claim of clashes between Indian and Chinese troops in a contested area of the Himalayas earlier this month. Quote, a high-level meeting of the Defense Ministry cleared the acquisition of around 120 missiles for the armed forces and their deployment along the borders, a senior defense source told the outlet. According to ANI, the arms in question are domestically developed Pralay missiles. There's probably a much more Indian way to pronounce that word, but I'm with the feather, not the dot, so I don't know how to pronounce that word. The tactical short-range quasi-ballistic devices were successfully tested by the Indian military a year ago. They are said to have the capability of hitting targets at ranges between 150 and 500 kilometers, and they're hard for air defenses to intercept due to directional changes during the flight. The agency described the reported development as a major decision for the country, which now has a policy of allowing the use of ballistic missiles in tactical roles. India's neighbors and geopolitical rivals, China and Pakistan, who are also nuclear powers, as is India, have both have ballistic missiles in their arsenals. India also borders Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. Bhutan is not one of those places you hear a lot about. They're sleepers, man. When those Bhutanese come out, man, with their, Type 56 Chinese SKS rifles, it's over. They're going to take over the whole world. But I found this interesting. India is deploying ballistic missiles to their contested border with China, while also simultaneously trying to figure out how they can sell wheat and other exports to China as part of their relationship with BRICS. Do we still have a live stream? We've been taken off the air? No, we have not. How interesting. 1,283 people here. Very cool. Only 342 thumbs ups. Not very cool. Do better, Bear Nation. Do better. Hit the little thumbs up button. That helps us in our ongoing battle against the YouTube algorithmic robots. Also, share the damn show with people you love. I know it's Monday. We're all feeling it. It's not even 9 a.m. in Eastern Oklahoma, and we already feel the full Mondayness of this Monday, right? You can still share the show. Somebody said, where did it go? Lynn Wilkerson. You know what's going even sadder? Human trafficking is such a huge thing. You may not even be on the asshole's radar yet. It is a huge thing, and it is sad AF, which is why we're doing something about it. And I can guarantee you, certain particular assholes, we're 100% on their radar, which is fine. Because to quote George Washington, stay strapped or get clapped. Probably. Last article I want to look at today from The Guardian. How high did U.S. inflation get this year, and where is it headed in 2023? I just want to reiterate one more time. While I don't welcome open conflict with anybody, okay, and I mean this sincerely, we're all going to die. Every single one of us is going to die. Nobody gets out of this shit alive. Not a single person gets off this planet alive. Some people will stay dead. Some people won't. That's a theological discussion. You're either tracking on that or you're not. But nobody gets to wear this meat suit forever. Not happening. Okay. Cool. How about a 40-year-long life filled with meaning and purpose rather than a 120-year life filled with lethargy and a lack of meaning, emptiness? Okay. Come at me, bro. Let's friggin' party. You want to take Bear off the map? Roger that. I also want to take you off the map. You would really be doing me a favor if you showed up and acted like an asshole. That'd be wonderful. Like, you know how much trouble you would save me? That'd be friggin' wonderful. So, let's party, bro. Let's do it. From theguardian.com. Inflation soared in 22 amid COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, and a broken supply chain. But here's what we can expect next. And the article has a lot of fluff. So we'll hit the wave tops. Did economists expect inflation to get this high? Per the article, not exactly. Many economists, including those at the Federal Reserve, believe that inflation would be transitory or temporary and would ease in 22 as supply chain issues got resolved and people slowed their spending. It was the message that both Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. * and Fed Chair Jerome Powell * were toting at the end of 2021. What has the Federal Reserve done to address inflation? The main tool the Federal Reserve has to address inflation is to adjust interest rates, which is meant to temper spending by making borrowing money more expensive. Back to that debt cycle, and shall we pan? We shall pan. No peasant shit. Back to the debt cycle and tempering spending by increasing the cost of money, aka credit. No peasant shit. Proverbs 22:7 is real. The rich rule over the poor, and a debtor is a slave to his debt. Back to the article. Starting in March, the Fed started hiking up interest rates at a pretty aggressive rate. In December, the Fed raised interest rates for the 7th time this year, bringing interest rates from 4.25% to 4.5%. Economists said the raised interest rates have only played a small role so far in getting the inflation rate down. Wonderful. In other words, what they thought was going to work isn't working. So far, the raised interest rates have been mostly felt in the housing market since rates directly impact mortgages. Home sales have been falling since February. Interestingly, I did something that I maybe regret doing. I was scrolling Instagram. Not recommended. By the way, Instagram, half of Instagram now appears to be, if you're a male, if you identify as a male, if you have, external reproductive organs between your legs, Instagram is softcore porn. What the hell happened? I don't know. It's not really worth being on there. I'll just put it that way. That being said, scrolling Instagram, and there was some like wannabe, motivational speaker, overnight millionaire dude talking about flipping real estate and how to this and that and the third, and 22,000 comments. And so I made the mistake of commenting on this asshole's post, Proverbs 22:7, get out of debt. Don't be a slave. The number of comments back to me were insane. Most of which talking about, I'll buy a house and I'll rent it to you and all your friends who don't think you want to be in debt, and blah, blah, blah. And, oh, so what you're saying is I should just save up $500,000 and buy it. And yes, that's what I'm saying. And I responded to one moron, and I said, let me ask you a question. Simple question. How many multi-million-dollar businesses have you built? I'll wait. Because I'm at 10, and I'm 39 years old without any debt, bootstrapping, some of which became very large businesses. They weren't my businesses, but I was part of the executive team on these businesses, right? Some of which became very large, multi-billion-dollar businesses, bootstrapped, no debt. It may shock you, but Refuge Medical has 2% of the market share of first aid kits in the world. We're 3.5 years old. We'll be 4 in what, March? March-ish? In March, we'll be 4 years old. We have 2% of the market share currently of first aid kits in the world. That's not an accident. And a large part of that is while every other company is struggling to figure out how they're going to buy stuff, buy inventory right now, because they don't have the liquidity to do that, we do. We're blessed. We take the profit that we earn and we reinvest it in the company so that we can pay good people. We can develop new products. We can hold inventory so that when you buy something today, it ships today. We have better fulfillment times than Amazon in many cases. And Amazon's a multi-billion-dollar company. So I'm not a genius. I'm not special. I just read the book and do what it says. And I don't feel like a slave or a peasant. And I don't think anybody else should either. Now, I realize it's a metric shit ton of hard work to get out of debt and then to have the discipline to not get back into it again. It's tempting. Well, I'm just gonna take a mortgage on land. That's all I'm gonna do. Okay, I'm just gonna be a little bit of a slave. I really need a new car. I'm just gonna finance another car. Okay, I'm just only gonna whore with this one person. Your life, you do what you want. But if we're gonna look at fruit, side by side fruit, we're going to look at people who participate in the debt cycle and people who don't, and compare productivity and quality of life. Why is it so many people who participate in the debt cycle are looking to get out of it, and so many people who don't aren't looking to get back into it? Test the fruit. Proof is in the pudding. Know what I mean? So let's see. Last little bit from this article at The Guardian. Will inflation continue to come down in 2023? Fed Chair Jerome Powell is taking a pessimistic view on inflation in the coming year. Quote, we've continually expected to make faster progress on inflation than we have, ultimately, Powell said on 14 December after the Fed's latest interest rate hike. The Fed has indicated it is aiming to keep raising interest rates until it hits somewhere between 5 and 5.5%. Signaling the Fed's officials concerned that inflation will prove to be stubborn. But compared to where things were last year, things appear to be in a better place, said Claudia Sahm, a former economist for the Fed and author of Stay at Home Macro. The things that looked like they were getting better this time last year didn't get better, they got worse. This year, swallow my tongue. This year, things are getting notably better. And the better is coming from 5 directions instead of 1, she said. It feels like there's more cause to be optimistic. Maybe. With these in mind, Sam is cautiously optimistic about inflation in the next year. With what in mind? COVID-19 appears to be more contained now than it was last year. Supply chains are easing up, leading to, for example, new and used car prices dropping. The U.S. has adjusted to the shock of the energy market caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Energy prices were going up because of Biden, not because of the invasion in Ukraine. Just so we're on the same page. The economy was a shit show because of poor leadership way before the war in Ukraine started. Also, The $5.3 trillion student loan bubble existed way before Ukraine. Fractional reserve banking existed way before Ukraine. Borrowing at interest existed way before Ukraine. All of these things were problems before the war in Ukraine. However, she continues, quote, "We're not on the other side of this. It's going to be messy. It's going to be a wild ride, but everything is lining up for 2023. She said, "Unless something else bad happens in the world, 2023 is a path back to something that's going to look normal." How foreboding. Unless something else bad happens in the world. Here's the thing with that. If you go looking for it, you'll find it. It's there. And that gets back to independence from the fragile, broken system. If you want to keep playing in that sandbox, it's your life. You can do it all you want. But come out of her, my people, lest you partake of her sins and receive of her plagues, is not just a geographical, physical thing. It's much more so a mental and spiritual thing. You want to whore with Babylon, go right ahead. Whore with Babylon. Your life, your choice, you do it. But you can't bitch out of one side of your mouth that things are so terrible, and then out of the other side of your mouth, continue to go looking for opportunities to whore with Babylon. And then be surprised when you find out, oh, she's a whore. Yeah, she's not going to treat you like a wife. She's a whore. Interesting. That's the brief for today. If you're one of those people that jumps off when it's time to talk about how to support the show, this is your very polite, gentle invitation to beat feet, skedaddle, get out of here, have a blessed day. Shalom. Okay. Should we leave America? To go where? Germany? They've started 2 world wars already in the last 100 years. Maybe not a great idea. Brazil? They're in bed with Russia and China. Where are we going to go? Australia? Oh, they locked people up because of COVID, and you're not allowed to have firearms. Maybe Canada? No. It's cold, and Trudeau's a jerk, and their gun laws suck. Greenland? No, because it's filled with ice. Iceland? I'm pretty sure that belongs to Denmark. Or is that Greenland? I don't know. Where are you going to go? And that's part of why I'm very much so trying to be more optimistic about the United States of America. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for 2 reasons. First of all, I see who's in charge of this shit show. Not exactly confidence inspiring. Second of all, I read the Bible and I know how this thing ends. That being said, best looking horse in the glue factory, and you got to play the hand that you've been dealt. And this is the hand that I've been dealt. This is what I got. So I'm going to play it to the best of my ability while also continuing to build my exit strategy. But my exit strategy is 10% my worldview. The other 90% normal everyday context is how do I capitalize on the opportunities that the Father puts in front of me so that I can build generational wealth for my children and raise them up in the way that they should go so they do not depart from it when they are older. Do I love what the United States of America has become? No. Do I love what it was? Yes. Do I love what it could be for me and the people that I love? Yes. Yes, I do. Is there a pathway forward in this country? Probably. Do I know what it is? No. Working on that. Something I think a lot about. But I can tell you this. It begins with strong individuals. Not from the top down. From the bottom up. Begins with strong, capable, resilient people who are not dependent upon this system that we all know has fallen apart in the first place. You want to weather the storm so that you can rebuild after the storm. You don't want to be in love with the storm, if that makes sense. Like sometimes you need to get out of the house and into the storm shelter because you know it's going to be bad. And then you get out of the storm shelter afterwards and you put the pieces back together again because you survived the storm. But you don't live in the storm shelter. Right? Ron White, what is the comedian Ron White? He's like, there are 2 specific threat levels. One is find a helmet and the other is put on the damn helmet. We're in find a helmet mode, right? Find the helmet. Not put on the helmet mode yet. We're not there. You should have a storm shelter, metaphorically, and a lot of you literally. But it's not time to live in the storm shelter yet. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have it. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be fully stocked. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be able to accommodate everybody that you love. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do the maintenance and the upkeep on it. But it's not time yet to live in the storm shelter. And since I don't live in the storm shelter yet, I've built the storm shelter. It's there. It exists. It's well maintained. It has a lot of capability. It'll fit everybody that I love inside of it. But since it's not time to get in the storm shelter yet, it's not time to put on the damn helmet yet, I have to execute on my 90% context my every day. I have businesses to run. I have ministries to run. I have people that I love to take care of. It is my job. I am biblically accountable for the provision, protection, and blessing of my household. My household, not my storm shelter. And if I have to move my family into the storm shelter, I will do that when the time is right. And I will tell y'all when it's time to put on the damn helmet and get in the storm shelter. I don't think we're there yet. And if I did, I hope you know me well enough to know that I would absolutely tell you in a heartbeat, that fast, put the helmet on, get in the storm shelter. It's about to get bad. We're not there yet. And so if you haven't built the storm shelter yet, you need to. It needs to exist. It needs to be able to provide, protect, and bless everybody you want to fit inside of it. It needs to be robust and resilient. It needs to not be destroyed when the house is wiped away by the storm. It definitely needs to exist. You definitely need to do that. But it's not time to live in the storm shelter yet. We're not there yet. And I've been blessed. Shalom, Brother Robert Holiday. I've been blessed that I have been given the opportunities to build the metaphorical storm shelter. And it is built. And it's staffed and provisioned and well maintained. And I've been blessed to be able to have conversations with y'all. Over 4,000 videos. 4,000 videos and live streams in the last 5 years on Patreon and YouTube. That's an average of 800 a year. I think we've talked quite a lot about how to build the storm shelter, who goes in the storm shelter, what indicators should I look for to get in the storm shelter, how do I provision the storm shelter, what should I build it out of, where should it be, how far away from my house should it be? And while I'm 100% on board with having a storm shelter, I'm also 100% aware that I don't live in it yet. And so we're going to be talking a little bit more at this channel about what do you do outside of the storm shelter so that maybe we don't have to get in it, or at a minimum of how to maximize the time that you have outside of the storm shelter so that when it is time to get in it, you're as squared away as friggin' possible. Roger. Let's talk about how to support the show. Hillbilly Homesteader knows how to spell independent very clearly. INDAPANDANTTUVWXYZ. You forgot the unicorn emoji, but yeah, you're very close. Very close. Patreon.com. There's a link in the description of every video and live stream. It is not an I love me, you should love me 2 page. There's a massive amount of exclusive content on Patreon. One of the most common pieces of feedback I get from Patreon is I can't keep up with all the content. Okay. That's a good indicator to me. That means that we're delivering on what we said we would deliver on. Sheepdog Tanker, you are appreciated greatly, Bear, even if it isn't always said to you. Keep doing what you do, brother. Bless you, Sheepdog. Thank you. I appreciate that. We do more of this on Patreon. I know Sheepdog Tanker's over there. I see him all the time. It's $5 a month. I would consider it an investment in your education on how to build the fallout shelter, the storm shelter, the bunker. Literally in some cases, and figuratively, metaphorically in many others. the video that posted this morning on Patreon was, thank you, Mark Chase. You were delivering value on Patreon. I appreciate that. We posted a video this morning, a conversation with my wife about overrated and underrated preps. So if you're wondering, like, am I on the right track? It's a really good video to square you away about, am I on the right track when it comes to preparedness? What do people overvalue with prepping? Or what do people undervalue with prepping? And for context, I've been prepping since Hurricane Katrina with a family for the last 11 years. Urban, suburban, and rural in all of those contexts. I don't know everything, but I do know a good bit. So much so we built an entire channel around it. So it's much more of a personal conversation and much deeper conversation on Patreon. So there's a link in the description. You can check that out. Refuge Medical, best first aid kits on planet Earth. 58 lives saved to date. Life number 58 was a driver who shouldn't have been driving on Friday, I believe it was. He slammed into the ditch behind our store.
Oh, yeah. That was like Friday.
If ever there was a great place to have a car wreck, it's directly behind the Refuge Medical store. And several of our people, including Bug Out Bob, Director of Operations, and Stalwart Peacekeeper, Chief Training Officer at Refuge Training, responded. Got the guy squared away. Tactically stoned, lucky bastard, right? If ever there was a place to have a car wreck. And when they found him, because, you know, it happened early in the morning, they got into work. They're like, hey, there's a guy in the ditch outside. And there was not a lot of traffic that because he shouldn't have been driving. There was snow on the ground. And they took his vitals, and his temperature was 90.8. He was going hypothermic. He was dying. It only took 43 minutes for EMS to get there. So that little $2 Mylar blanket that we include in kits because it's part of the March algorithm, massive bleeding, airway, respiratory, circulation, head injury, hypothermia, and then everything else. That guy was, I don't know what the ambient was that morning. It was probably about 10 degrees before the wind chill. And he was in bad shape, 90.8. And so they were able to get him warmed up, get him stable, get him in the back of a bus. When EMS showed up 43 minutes later, they saved his life. 58 lives saved to date. So do not underestimate the value of having a good, capable first aid kit in your vehicle on your person. It's incredibly relative. You know, that 7% of the world's population wears body armor for a living. Law enforcement, EMS, fire, military, 7%. They know they need first aid kits. And while we sell them a bunch of first aid kits, we don't directly market to those kinds of people because it's a really, really, really contested space. What about the other 93% of us? Us that don't wear body armor for a living. You still need a first aid kit. Statistically speaking, the most dangerous thing you do is drive as an American. Hundreds of thousands of car wrecks every year. Statistically speaking, the number one preventable cause of death in the United States of America. It's not diabetes. It's not heart disease. It's uncontrolled bleeding. Which means, statistically speaking, the most dangerous thing you're going to do today is drive. And the most likely thing that's going to kill you is a car wreck where you bleed out. And so having a first aid kit in your vehicle and knowing how to use it can literally save your life or somebody else's life. BT Dubs, the BearFAK is back in stock at Refuge. A lot of y'all have been asking, when is it going to come back in stock? It's back in stock today. If you got a little bit of Christmas money burning a hole in your pocket or you didn't get what you were hoping for, refugemedical.com. It's still December, which means it's still free shipping on everything in the store. If it says it's in stock on the website, that means we have it under our roof. You have 4 days until your HSA and FSA expires. So if you have an HSA, health savings account, or a flexible spending account, all of our kits and all of our components are HSA and FSA eligible. So please use that. Don't lose it. Good morning, Connor. I just put 3 more Cat 7s in the truck yesterday. Bless you, Mark Chase. Good move. And of course, the featured kit of the day. I believe RL said earlier, thank you for the daily deal emails. You're welcome. I'm glad to know you're enjoying them. I was kind of on the fence about doing an email every day, but we've been getting good feedback about it. And so we're probably going to continue to do that. I'll tell you what, Palmetto State Armory has been emailing me 4 to 6 times a day during the Christmas season. I know they exist. They're on my radar. If I need something, I'll go see them, right? So I like their daily deals emails. I click those. I look at those. But the 6 emails a day, that's a little much. So we won't be doing that. But we might stick with the daily deals from Refuge. 1 email a day. I don't mind the emails as they're useful and you don't do sales specials very often. Thank you, 5-1. I appreciate that. We don't do sales and specials very often, honestly, because there's not a lot of markup in our kits. It costs a lot of money to make an American-produced product. So there's not a lot of headroom in our stuff. So, like, if you see 10% off, Shalom, Tommy Salter, what's up, brother? If you see 10% off, that's half of our profits gone, right? When we do 20% off, when the team is like, we need to do 20% off, I literally, I told the team, I was like, I get visions of 9/11 in my head. I see planes flying into buildings, right? And they're like, trust us, boss, we can do it. I'm like, great, we made 2% on that sale. So these are just facts, right? Refuge Training, as I said, stalwart peacekeeper who is our chief training officer at Refuge Training. Awesome guy, former Army MP and SATCOM guy, rendered a bunch of aid in the field in the GWAT. He was one of the people that responded to this guy being in a ditch behind the Refuge building. Our people know their stuff, and our training is, and I don't mean this with ego or hubris. This is other people who have told us this, other people who have the right to know. I'm talking trauma docs, surgeons, ER doctors, nurses, combat lifesavers, Air Force pararescuemen, Marine snipers, Navy SEALs, Army Special Forces, 6 of them now, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, all of which have come to class. And you would think there's no reason this class of people needs this information. Wrong. Yeah, they do. We've had all these people from all these different walks of life, to say nothing of the truck drivers. You know, 6% of Americans drive heavy trucks for a living. 6%. You know, the cost of a semi accident, if it's just truck and driver, on average is $142,000. Medical expenses and replacement cost or repair to the vehicle, on average $142,000. If it's more than the truck and the driver, like they hit another vehicle, they hit a bystander, they hit a bicyclist, the cost of that single incident skyrockets to $7.2 million in repairs and damages. 538 people were killed by semis last year, most recent year for data. 538 people. If you had a fleet of 3,000 trucks, if you had a fleet of 3 trucks or 30 trucks, we'll just go with 3,000 trucks, you could buy a BearFAK for every truck and train every driver responder 1 and spend less than half of what it would cost for a single accident involving another vehicle. And that's on average. Some of the case studies I've looked at, some of the costs associated where the driver hit another vehicle and then the person in that vehicle expired from their injuries or the driver was killed, the families were awarded between $20 and $53 million. Now, the loss of life is tragic. But what if you could do something about that? A BearFAK's $269. Why isn't there one in your truck? Why didn't you come to Responder 1 and learn how to use it? If you're a fleet manager, how come every driver hasn't been trained in Responder 1? March algorithm, massive bleeding, airway, respiratory, circulation, head injury, hypothermia, everything else. And why isn't there an American-made, capable, purpose-built kit mollied to the dash or under the front seat of every truck on the road? Not one of those garbage little tin can kits. You know, OSHA certified. We make those too, and they're the best on the market. Think about that. Average cost of $7.2 million. I can outfit and train an entire fleet for less than half of that. It's inexcusable in my mind, right? So Refuge training, best training on the face of the earth. Responder 1, Responder 2, Responder 3. I would encourage you strongly to find dates that are near-ish to you and come to class. And again, all the tactical guys know that they need this training. They know that they need these kits. But I'm telling you, if you're a stay-at-home mom who drives the kids to and from soccer, there is a 100% statistical chance that you will have a wreck once every 10 years. There are hundreds of thousands of motor vehicle accidents every year. And the number one cause of death, preventable death in the United States of America, is uncontrolled bleeding. I was taking my 10-year-old to soccer, and they died because they broke their femur in this car wreck, and they severed their femoral artery, and they bled out in 98 seconds. And I didn't have a tourniquet. Inexcusable to me, right? So I want you guys and girls to have the equipment and training you need at your fingertips to be able to deal with these things, because you will deal with this. It will happen. It is statistically not probable, but statistically certain that you will at some point in your life deal with these things. That's what Refuge is all about. That's what we do. Lastly, Grindstone Ministries. I got my cool shirt on today, Grindstone Ministries, mostly because my other one is putrid from the gym and drumming this morning, but also because I kind of like Grindstone. It's the end of the year. If you're into end of year giving, please prayerfully consider Grindstone Ministries. Grindstone is a disaster relief ministry. And so after hurricanes and tornadoes, in real SHTF for real people, we go and help the people who were barely getting by before the storm put their lives back together. We've fed tens of thousands of hot meals, moved thousands of tons of groceries and non-perishable goods, moved tens of thousands of cubic yards of debris, rebuilt people's houses, fixed fences. I've sawed more logs than I can count, hauled, I don't know how many truckloads of brush and debris, witnessed to people, baptized more people than we can count, given away more than 5,000 copies of the scriptures. And we're blessed to be able to do that because of y'all. And Grindstone is building Caleb House. Caleb House is a restoration facility. It's our second ministry for juvenile human trafficking survivors. This means big words, $50 words for children who have been serially raped by assholes. And so not only do we go and extract those kids from bad situations, but we provide the setting that they need to heal from that, to put them back together again. And our program is not like a year-long program or a 6-month program. It's lifelong. Because I'm not going to tell a 6-year-old, I'm sorry, sweetie, your time is up. I hope you got your shit together. Best of luck. When you do that, typically those kids go back into the foster system. There's an 83% recidivism rate, 83% likelihood that child will be trafficked again because of the pre-existing conditions that have been put in place by the fact that they were trafficked in the first place. So I got an 8 in 10 chance after we rescue this kid, after we begin the process of putting them together again. I got an 8 in 10 chance that all that work, all that restoration is done away with within a year of them leaving our eyesight. That shit is unacceptable to me. Not doing that. You know, the average lifespan, let me break your heart. The average lifespan of somebody who's being trafficked is 7 years. 7 years. They can make it for 7 years statistically. So if you have somebody who began being trafficked at 13, they're statistically dead by 20. So not only do we need to get them out, we have a moral and ethical obligation to restore them, to put them back together again, to break those generational curses. And that's what we're doing at Caleb House. And is it enough? No. But it's what we can do right now. It'll never be enough. When this audience, when you and I together build 100 Caleb houses, it still won't be enough. But it will be better than if we didn't. It'll be better if we never stepped foot into this arena. And it doesn't matter to me that there's assholes out there that want to kill me, literally, because I do this. Cool story, bro. Get in line. That's fun. When I go to the range, it's not just to bang steel to look cool on camera. We have to get these kids. We have to. We have to. I don't know about anybody else. Not my job. I'm not in charge of anybody else. We have to. The Father has told us unequivocally, you have to do this. Yes, sir. You got it. To the best of my broken ability. Then after you rescue somebody like that, you have to restore them. They're under your covering. They're your responsibility now. And it doesn't mean that there aren't good foster parents out there, because there are. But I'm not okay with an 83% likelihood that that kid is trafficked again. And I'm not okay with a 7-year lifespan. Trafficked at 7, dead at 14. Trafficked at 12, dead at 19. That shit's unacceptable. We're not doing that. So what we are doing is building Caleb House. We already have 24 people in our care. It costs us more than $20,000 a month to provide for the 24 people we already have. We can't do that without y'all. So I say it at the end of every brief, but I mean it at the end of every brief. You are the best audience on the face of this earth. And it is an honor for me that we get to do what we do, because you support us in the doing of it. We couldn't do this without you. And I am firmly aware that it is the Father's hand blessing us, but he's using you to do it. So I thank you for that. Because those statistics are not okay with me. And if we can impact those statistics even a little bit, I'm cool with it. So with that, I'll leave you with the encouragement that King David gave his son Solomon as he was an old man, instructing Solomon about the building of the temple. 1 Chronicles 23, I believe. Rise up and do. Go do good stuff today. Be the Father's hands and feet. Be the light. Build the temple. Rise up and do. Y'all have a blessed day. Shalom.